and welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have a classic pot roast for you, but before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that we have a Patreon. If you'd like to support us there, I'll put a link in the description below, and we'd like to thank all of our patrons over on Patreon for supporting us. We also have an affiliate link with Chef's Temp if you need a kitchen thermometer or meat probe. Please check out the link in the description below, and use code LOVEYOURFOOD on checkout for 15% off your order. In the meantime, our ingredients. So we've got some beef, an onion, a shallot, some garlic, some leeks, greens and white, some celery, carrot, potatoes, parsnips, some mushrooms, some beef demi-glace, which we'll be using just for some richness, and some beef broth. So we're starting off with a little bit of mise en place, as we normally do, and we're going to cut our veggies pretty chunky. We want to have, big pieces of vegetables in the final pot roast. Now, on these parsnips, don't worry if the end bits get kind of small, that's fine. They're just going to kind of melt into the broth of everything and form your gravy. So same thing with the carrots. We're going to make big rounds of the carrots. If you can't get food service carrots like this, they're pretty easy to find usually, but if you can't get them, just cut your carrots pretty big. Now we're going to cut the potatoes on kind of a thin cut so that they're all roughly the same height because we're going to use them to prop up the meat later. Same thing with our onions. We're going to cut big rounds of our onion as well. And we're going to be caramelizing. Well, not caramelizing, but we're going to be putting those on the bottom. Now for the rest of this, the celery and the shallots, we're going to be chopping these a little bit smaller. And these are all going to, again, form kind of the basis of the gravy of the pot roast. There's our leeks. That's the leek whites there. You can see the garlic as well as the leek greens. We're going to chop that pretty finely. And all of these aromatics are going to offer that amazing flavor as it cooks down. And this is going to cook for some time. Now here's our beef. We've got a sirloin tip. So we're going to salt and pepper one side of that. And we do want to get this seared first to get that really nice Maillard reaction, get all that flavor first. So we've got some hot olive oil in the pan. And in goes our beef. Now we patted this dry. We wanted to make sure that it was pretty dry before it hit the pan. And then once that's in there, we're going to season the other side. And we're just going to let that sear for a little bit. Salt and pepper. And you want to just keep turning that as each side gets nicely seared in the pan. And don't worry about all of the bits stuck to the bottom of the pan. We are going to be using all of that. You see the great sear on there. That's going to give you some awesome flavor later. And we're just going to make sure it is nicely seared on all sides. And then we're just going to set that aside. Don't worry if it's cooked through. It's going to cook for a long time. So we have all this great flavor in our pan now, and we're going to use our veggies to sort of soak some of that up. So in goes our potatoes first. So we're going to place our potatoes. As you can see, we're trying to keep everything kind of the same height. In goes the slices of onion as well. And you can be judicious about this, or you can place it in there haphazardly, however you want to do it. We want to kind of make a fairly level space for our meat to sit on. So we're just going to put everything in there. We're just going to place it as best we can. And you want good contact with the stuff that's on the bottom. You want it really nicely contacting the bottom of the pan. It's going to kind of deglaze naturally as it cooks. A little dash of salt in there. And a little bit more black pepper. And then we're going to let that cook for just a little while, just in the pan like that. And then we're going to add all of our other nice ingredients. We've got the leeks going in, the shallots, the garlic. And you can see it all in there. And then we're going to cover that and let it all kind of steam together for a while until it gets a little bit soft. You can see the leeks have all kind of wilted a bit. We use frozen leeks. We freeze fresh leeks to have them, so they're already started a little wilted. But you can see they're all starting to cook. Everything's starting to look a little bit softer. Now, you're not going to get a whole lot of color this way, especially on your onions. It's going to take some time. But what we really want to do now is we're going to take our beef, we're going to put it back in there. And then it's time to add our Demi-glace. Now, demi-glace is a very complicated process. It's a long process to make. We just bought some. We may do a video on how to make demi-glace in the future sometime. It's a very long and involved process. And then in goes our beef stock. So we just use 1 container of beef stock. And it's okay if your beef is sticking out of there. We're going to cover this. It's not going to dry out or anything. And let it cook. We're going to let it come up to the simmer. And you can see all those great ingredients. They're all mingling in there. All that flavor is mixing together. And then we're going to cover that completely. We're going to put on the solid cover on there. And that's going to go into the oven. And it's going to cook in the oven for a few hours. And honestly, you can cook this for a long, long, long time at a very low temperature. And here we go. We're taking it out now. And you can see it's come up to the boil. It's really simmering quite strongly now. Most of the color has come off the beef because what has happened is it's come off in the stock, which means you've got all that amazing flavor in the stock from that Maillard reaction in the beef. Now, it wasn't quite as tender as we were hoping yet, so we're just going to pop that back into the oven and put it in for another couple of hours. And that is just going to sit in there, again, super low temperature for a good long time, until it starts to look a little bit like this. And you can see it's nice and hot in there. It has been cooking for a long, long time, and that beef gets really nice and tender. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take the lid off and just put that under the broiler briefly. Just put it back in the oven briefly, just to get a little bit of color on the top of the beef. You can see there, we just wanted a little bit of that nice roasting color on top of the beef. And then we set that aside. We put that aside until the next day. These things are, almost always better the next day. This is no exception. The next day, we got our mushrooms out, and we decided we were going to do these separately. We didn't put these into the pot roast because we wanted to just nicely brown them to go into the pot roast as it's served. So they go into some butter, a little bit of salt and pepper. And we're going to give these a good long time on the stove until they're nice and brown and reduced like this. Really concentrates their flavor. We were running a little short on mushrooms. We only had a couple. We're going to deglaze that pan. I mean, it's non-stick. It doesn't really need deglazing, but we're going to bring up all that nice flavor with a little bit of cognac. And then in goes all of our pot roast from the previous day. That has been in the fridge overnight. We just cut some nice sections. We've got a little bit of the potatoes, the parsnips, the carrots, a little bit of that amazing gravy. And we're just going to mix that in with those great mushrooms until everything's nice and hot in there. And you can see everything's getting really nice and hot. A little bit of extra cooking is not going to hurt your beef either. And then it's time to serve. As soon as everything's good and hot, it's hot through. You want to put that in a plate. You can arrange it however you like and pour a little bit of that amazing gravy over top. Garnish with a little bit of fresh parsley if you've got it on hand. Some chopped chives or green onion also wouldn't go amiss with that. And that's it. That's the whole thing. It's not a complicated process. It does come out delicious. It's rich. That demi-glace really adds a real richness to it. And we hope you'll give this one a try. If you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. We'd like to thank our patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to support us there, I'll put a link in the description below. And remember to love your food.